Let's talk about business in the country. Let's talk about indigenous businesses that support Kenya's economy from various fronts. One of them is Premier Food Industries Limited. You know, when you say that, some people will be like, Premier Food Industries. I've heard the name Premier League.
Actually, when you say Premier, you immediately...
Premier.
I'm about to ask, what do they brew beer?
Yeah, Premier. Premier Foods. Right? When I say Peptang, though...
Then I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So there's Peptang. Peptang, the house of Peptang is called Premier Foods Industries Limited. This company, if you were to guess how old it is and how long it has been in operation in this country, how old do you think it is?
It's old. I think it may even be older than me because as a child, I encountered Peptang. Yes.
The tomato sauce.
Yes. Now, I know that the issue here is, was I once a child? Yes, Eric.
That was my next question. I was going to say,
I was a child
explain
once.
to us this childhood experience of your city.
And you have a sharp memory.
I know.
Oddly enough, as you get older, one of the things that are clear, the things of your youth are much, much clearer than these confusing things that happened
That are happening now.
Yes, these ones. But childhood, clarity. Yes.
So you remember Peptang?
I remember Peptang
sauce
very well.
When you were young.
Yes.
So that is
Tomato sauce.
a couple of decades ago, right?
Actually,
friend, you're older than Kenya.
They
You
are,
know that?
Yes, I am older than Kenya, the country. Not the landmass, just the country. Yes, it existed.
The Independent Republic of Kenya. So let's speak to the CEO of Premier Foods Industries Limited, the house of Peptang. He joins us on the line. His name is Joseph Choge. Joseph, good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. It's good to have you on the show.
My pleasure.
Karibu sana. This is called the Situation Room.
Asante.
So let's just start with you answering that question. Is this company older than CT?
Maybe age of
City.
his father.
Well. Okay. How old is Peptang? Is this company's Premier Food Industries?
To be precise, Peptang is now 85 years old.
It's definitely older than I know Eric was hoping that... Eric, sorry, your hopes have been dashed. It's definitely older than me.
Yeah.
85 years old.
Yeah, incorporated in 1935.
And all these years you've just been doing tomato sauce and others.
I'm telling you, tomato sauce, juices, jams, you name it.
Let me ask the question. The name Peptang,
Yeah.
how did that come about?
I think, okay, so it's definitely older than me by far, because I'm just, I'm under 40. Peptang, I think it was just coined from, if you look at pep and tang in the dictionary, it's just about a nice thing, you know? So I can't point out the dictionary meaning at the moment, but it's coined from a nice thing. I think somebody just played with words and just came up with Peptang. In fact, when I heard about Peptang before, I thought it was Chinese.
But it makes sense to pep you up. And
Pep you up, you know,
something
pep up your
tangy.
day.
Says in,
Yes.
So tang is about taste.
Well, tangy has something to liven up your taste buds.
Correct.
So that's what it is.
Yeah.
Apart from Peptang, the tomato sauce, what other pep do you have? Or tang?
So we produce a myriad of products. We do, so of course, Peptang is our flagship brand, under which we do the sauces and myriads of sauces from tomato sauce, ketchup, chili, and all that. And then we also have, juices. For example, the Orchid Valley juice, taking the market by storm. Very nice natural juice. We also have the jams, the Peptang jam. We have Peptang honey. We have baked beans for your morning breakfast. I'm sure somebody's salivating at the moment as I go on. We have the dilute drink juices, like the squashes, that I'm sure you grew up with, especially going to school with. Yeah. There are other. We have even githeri, canned githeri, and many other stuff in our portfolio.
No, do that Candy Githeri bit again. Candy Githeri.
Yes.
we have
Yes, actually,
we
if
have
you go to the
Candy Githeri.
supermarkets and not just
Yeah.
breeze past the shelves, you will likely see it. Yes, there is Kandikideri. He's right.
Yes,
Right.
yes, yes. Yeah, and I didn't mention our baby in the latest baby, our peanut butter. If you've not tried, you don't know what you're missing.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it seems that there's been a lot of diversification over the last few years. How have you been able to keep this running? If you started out with tomato sauces and now we're talking about a full meal in a can, how have you been able to maintain and even thrive as a business over the last 85 years?
So we center ourselves on quality. We are a home of quality. So that's what has propelled our name since inception. So anything we do, we put quality at the center of what we do. And over the years, we've defined ourselves as a food company. We want to be in your table from breakfast to dinner. As such, we try to increase our portfolio every other day to be able to, as we meet the consumer needs. We partner with farmers from different parts of the world. We have the people who supply us mangoes from Hola, Ukambani. We have Kenyans who supply us honey from Baringo, Meru, across the country. Tomatoes from Loitoktok, different small-scale farmers all over. So that partnership is what has managed to sustain us throughout this year. And we continue to solidify our partnership with our partners.
Right. I think it's very interesting that you talk about partnership with local farmers because, I mean, I look at that as, a double-edged sword in terms of how you're able to do business. If the company is thriving, but at the same time, you're able to then support local farmers. So are you at a place whereby you say, look, if you have a good product or even asking you, go ahead and farm your product and we'll be able to mop it up? Is that what farmers can do? Can farmers actually approach you and say, look, I have this product, I've been farming it for some time. Would you then be able to pick it up so that I have a sustainable source of income? And then I'm also encouraged to contribute to this as well.
Yeah, actually, we take pride in supporting the local farmer because, any day we can wake up and decide to go and farm huge tracts of land for ourselves. But if it can be able to sustain a farmer somewhere who can be able to take the kids to school or sustain their livelihood, we take much pride in that. And as such, any farmer who does, say, tomatoes or any inputs that come to us, we are more than happy to partner with them anytime. We mop up, especially during glut season. There's a time when tomatoes are just flooded in the market and it goes to waste. And sometimes it pains me that probably we need to even increase our capacity so that we process the tomato pulp and actually store so that farmers don't go at a loss. So any small-scale farmer who can do any inputs within our realm would be happy to partner with them.
Right.
Let me ask the question. Since this is a business that is ongoing, they will the products you use are seasonal, at least semi-seasonal. With modern technology, they don't have to be. Do you have your own farms and your own outlets where you actually, so that you guarantee that irrespective, despite and whatever happens, you are able to actually have the supplies you need?
Actually, you'd be surprised because our farmers sort of sustain us year in, year out. What we've done now is we have a pilot farm about over 300 acres where we are trying to see how we can improve the yield of that particular farmer. So we brought in new varieties, about 9 varieties of tomatoes that are almost double the yield of the Kenyan local farmer. So we've done the first pilot. We've harvested the other day. We've found that at least 2 varieties have almost doubled the yield. And we want to do a second pilot. And as soon as we can confirm that the yields are actually more than double what the Kenyan farmer is doing at the moment, then we can be able to supply them with seeds to be able to ensure that sustainability of the supply chain for us.
So how do you work with the farmers? I mean, what kind of contract? Do you get into contracts with groups of farmers, or is it individual farmers, or do you just go to the market? Let's say the farmers in Loitoktok have produced the tomatoes. Do you just go to the market and buy, or do you have contracts with farmers in Loitoktok for tomatoes?
Okay. So at the moment, we've not had any particular contract with the farmers, but we have engagement with our extension officers on the ground, and that relationship has been built so that they know their destinations. Once they harvest their produce, we are standby to take their product. And in that case, they can be able to, sell to us at the market value, a price that we can actually be able to benefit them. As we go by, when our seed, comes to age, when we can actually say we've got a very new variety of seeds that we can actually sustain them and increase their yield, then we can go into some sort of contract where, sustainably they are able to know that when the produce is ripe, you just bring to us, and we'll always supply them seeds, the fertilizers necessary, and all the inputs that they need.
But then I'm wondering, why is it that you would consider not going into contracts where somebody would go producing knowing that I have a ready market for my produce and this is the price at which I'm going to sell? For example, if I look at the brewers, they have contracts with their farmers for barley, for sorghum, and for everything else. Why don't you have the same? I'm thinking about, because I know a couple of farmers, for example, in Loitoktok, who one season they have planted, they have invested heavily, but because of one reason or the other, because of a glut in the market, because of flooding in their farms, they go at a loss. If you had a contract with them and you ensure that you are even offering proper extension services, wouldn't that really benefit the farmer?
It would actually, and that is at the heart of what we are trying to do with the pilot program, because we wanted to be in a position to control the quality of the output that comes from the farmer. Okay, at the moment, if we compare the output per acre, when a farm somewhere in Brazil or China is doing 100 tons, Kenya is only doing 20 tons. You see, that's 5 times lower yield than what is expected, and that makes us uncompetitive in the market. Yeah. So what we are trying to do is, being the biggest tomato consumer in the country, single tomato consumer in the country, biggest tomato consumer in the country, we're trying to see how is it that we can be able to, uplift this farmer by improving their yield, and that way we control the entire supply chain from end to end. It's something that is overdue, I must agree. But as far as mangoes are concerned, for example, mangoes, we actually do contract farming with the farmers somewhere in the coast and Ukambani. We give them seedlings, and we try to grow the orchard. You'll be surprised that we don't have enough mangoes in Kenya. It boggles my mind. No, same thing for passion fruit. It is a passion fruit called the yellow passion. Mm-hmm. This one, I would urge any farmer who can be able to go into it, though it's a low altitude kind of produce. If there's a farmer who can be able to go in and do probably large scale or this kind of farming, we'll provide the seed and they provide to us the fruit. We can't even meet half the demand of this particular fruit.
Kindly explain to me, how does contract farming work?
So contract farming is a process where I get a seed. Okay, so I get into an engagement with a farmer. We agree that I'm gonna probably provide seeds, farm inputs, if there are any fertilizers that are required and everything. And out of that, the farmer tends to the crop until it's mature. And once it's ready for harvesting, I will come and be able to take the produce. Or if we agree that the produce is landed to the factory, they bring to the factory. And even before, the reason we are doing the pilot we are doing is be able to know what kind of yields am I able to get per a quarter of an acre, for example, or an eighth of an acre, for example. So I know this is the yield I expect from this, and this is the assured return that this particular farmer can be able to get from us. That way, it's a win-win symbiotic relationship between the two entities.
Okay, you said something that was interesting, Joseph, is that you don't even have enough. For example, you say enough mangoes in Kenya. A couple of weeks ago, we maybe some months ago now, we heard of a business that has been able to blossom by virtue of the fact that she takes mango waste that has been thrown away, and she's turning this into dried fruit and is exporting it. So this is waste. So now if you're on this point saying that there's not enough in the country, she's been able to thrive or build this business as a result of what has been thrown away. So isn't there something missing here? If we're saying that this mango has been thrown away, on the other side, there's a company that is saying we don't even have enough with which to produce, and we're asking that more and more farmers join. So it seems that there's some kind of there's a mismatch then between supply and demand and the market.
Yeah. So what happens is there are glut seasons in the market. Right now we are in the process of doing. Mangoes are ripe in the market at the moment as we speak. Now, I'll tell you, there's overcapacity of processing mangoes in Kenya. There are several factories that are processing. And the mangoes that we get, the organized groups that are able to bring the mangoes to the factories cannot be able to sufficiently sustain our running capacity. And the problem is we have idle time. We probably process mangoes only probably half the year, 6 months in a year. There are only 2 seasons in a year. So are we able to come, so that the problem now is that everyone comes with mangoes at the same time. That's when we have, we have that particular glut, and probably some will rot. And it's good that somebody is actually going the dried mango way. I think I know even someone in Thika who is doing a fantastic job in ensuring that, able to mop up the excess supply within a certain point in time.
Let me ask this question. I ask as a layperson, at what point is a fruit ripe and at what point is it rotting? And at what point is it completely beyond any useful purpose?
Yeah. So there's when the fruit is ripe, it's I'll use a little bit of kawaida fruit that you take, Eric, and you munch, it's so juicy and all. That's the perfect time that, we can maximize on the juice. Now, it can ripen a bit more, which can still be used for juicing. But then, beyond that, it will have infestation by some insects. The doodles will just come into the fruit and it will just be bad. So I think the person you mentioned who is actually able to dry is at least gone on the overripe one, okay? Which we may not be able to use because now probably the acidity levels become bad,
okay,
for our consumption. Because there's something we look at as well. We look at the juiciness and the sweetness of this particular fruit to be able to deliver a very good juice to you.
I'm thinking about food security. When you talk about such produce, for example, the mangoes or even the tomatoes, there's great concern about residue, and this is how farmers will go and spray chemicals to their fruit just a few days before harvest, so that it's still looking fresh and red and looking very good as it goes to the market. What do you do as a company when you're purchasing this to ensure that what you purchase meets the residue requirements, and therefore what goes into the tomato sauce does not have chemicals?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question, and we are very keen on that. So we have a very, very intense cleaning up process to ensure that no chemical residues are moved from the fruit into the pulping or sauce or juice that we actually use. And we have laboratories within the organization that measure. Once the pulp is out, you can't take it to the next level before measuring if there's any chemical level within the fruit. So the cleanup process is the one that assists us to ensure that we don't take any chemical residues from spraying. And what we advise farmers as much as possible is to use more organic kind of herbicide as opposed to any that have chemicals that could, eventually lead to diseases. So we are very, very keen to ensure that doesn't happen.
So what do you do to that to ensure that the farmers understand the importance of not having the chemical residues?
Yes, it's the training. It's the training. If you go to the ground right now, say you go to Shimba Hills at the moment, you go to Loitoktok, you'll find our extension farmers on the ground. And the particular farms that we actually take the crops from, they've had training throughout the year. They've had constant engagement with our teams just to ensure that the quality of our fruit is protected. Because we just don't take any type of fruit to come to the factory. We have to be very careful on the quality of the fruit that comes. Somebody can just think, tomorrow I just show up at Peptang in the morning and I just bring any kind of tomato and we'll take. No. It has to have undergone a certain process in terms of growing, even transportation, bringing it to the factory. We don't want it exposed. So there's a way we carry them so that they are not broken and infested with any microorganisms before they get to the factory. And even once they get to the factory, there's a whole process of cleanup, testing, just before we actually process it into a pulp, a sauce, or a juice.
Joseph, I must say that everything that you've said just seems to be working so beautifully, right? From farm to packaging and even the advice. What are the challenges that you faced in being able to sustain this kind of business in Kenya?
Yeah. In fact, biggest challenge is the cost of inputs that goes into our farmers. If the necessary government bodies would support the farmers so that they are able to subsidize, their production, would be able to be competitive. Today, a juice or a tomato sauce can come from Egypt and becomes cheaper than what is locally produced here. Why? Because there they have subsidies, crops, husbandry for the crops, and all these things are done in there's a huge government support, so that whatever produce they bring, it's actually much cheaper, and I can be able to take the same and pass it on to the consumer. But at the moment, the kind of inputs they use is a bit, expensive. Labor is a bit expensive, and as such, by the time the inputs come to us, it's already at a higher price compared to the market, almost double what I would probably get from an Egypt or another country. So that's been our biggest challenge. From a supply chain perspective, it's the question of how do we continue to have farmers come in cooperatives, so that our cost of going to amalgamate the produce and bring them together. So if they have cooperatives or something like that brings the produce together, so that when we go to collection, it's not an expensive process of bringing the produce to the factory.
We've been talking to Joseph Choge. He is the CEO of Premier Food Industries Limited. Premier Food Industries is a house of Peptang. Now, you've seen Peptang juice, not Peptang, the tomato sauce. You've seen a lot of Peptang product. This company is 85 years old, has been operating in this country for that long. Joseph, you told us that not just the what we know. There's juices. There's a tomato juice. There's a tomato sauce rather. There's juice. There's peanut butter. There's jam. What else do you?
Okay, so I think I probably have not mentioned the tomato paste. There's the mixed vegetables. There's some beans that we have. And of course, now the one thing that probably people don't know is that we actually, when we take the mangoes, when we crush them, we get a pulp that we use for our juicing. Okay, even passion. But we are not necessarily the full consumer of what we crush. We also sell to other juice makers within the country and even in the East Africa region. So the pulp that we get from this now, that makes your Orchid Valley juice. Okay. That is now almost our new flagship, almost overtaking our sources.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for speaking to us, Joseph. And as you leave, we had talked with you earlier, and you had said you're coming with goodies, and these goodies are going out to our audience this morning. 10 hampers coming from Premier Food Industries this morning. Let me just ask the two questions that would get our winners this morning. Between now and the end of the show, going onto our social media platforms, Spice FM KE on Facebook and on Twitter. List 3 variants of the Peptang peanut butter. List 3 variants of Peptang peanut butter. Is that a good question, Joseph?
Yep, perfect.
All right, let's also add another one. List any 3 variants of Peptang sugar-free jam. That's the one? That's a good question as well.
Yep.
So list any 3 variants of Peptang sugar-free jam and any 3 variants of Peptang peanut butter. You
rephrase it. The variants of Peptang jam. Just the variants of Peptang jam.
Peptang jam. Okay.
Yeah.
List any 3 variants.
Because sugar-free is one of them. You've just given them away.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Sawa. That is one. So list any other 2 variants of Peptang jam. Asante sana, Joseph, and we'll have the winners, and we'll get the winners then to speak to you later on.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joseph.
For having us here.
Right.
Keep it peptang.
Asante sana.